All right, the recording is starting.
Awesome, I got the notification. Alrighty, welcome everyone to our March Bridge program. I'm Samantha Vail, the younger member chair, as well as the Bridge program co-host.
And I'm Nick Phillips. For those that don't know me, I am the branch director here and resident loudmouth. So we're excited to show you guys a little presentation today on e-meetings. Jonathan Brower here, the president of the Dallas ASCE branch, is going to be giving us just a little talk over doing our Microsoft Teams meetings and tips and tricks, how to have good meetings, how to conduct yourself in meetings, things like that. So we're really excited to have him here and really excited to have you all here to participate and watch. As always, if you guys have questions or comments or anything you want to throw in the chat, let's keep it lively. You know, it's a dynamic space. Go ahead and throw it in the chat as you think it.
Okay, so a quick overview of what we're going to be covering today. So we're going to start the meeting off with a presentation over Virtual Meetings 101, what you need to know or should know now that we're in this virtual space, and virtual meeting etiquette, what that is. And then afterwards, we're going to open the floor up to everyone and anyone to share some helpful tips on Microsoft Teams or Zoom, whatever you want to share. So yeah, with that, I'm going to, before we get started, I'm going to share a video with no context yet. So give me a second. I want to make sure you can't see. Let's see.
So it's gonna be a new part of our topics. We're gonna have surprise videos for the audience here.
All right, can everyone see? Actually, I need to make sure I include the computer sound. Okay. There we go. Can everyone see?
Yep.
Yep.
As part of an experiment to explore the human mind, we asked 22 people to solve the same riddle and recorded their responses. Feel free to participate also. Are you ready?
The riddle. A father is about to bring his son to a job interview, applying for a position at a large stockbrokers company in the city. Just as they arrive at the company's parking lot, the son's phone rings. He looks at his father, who says, "Go ahead, answer it." The caller is the trading company CEO, who says, "Good luck, son, you've got this." The son ends the call and once again looks at his father, who is still next to him in their car. How is this possible?
He gets a call from the CEO, but it says,
"Good luck, son."
But he was next to him.
So it's not the father.
I think it was probably an audio recording of his father.
Maybe he made a demo tape.
Like he has two fathers?
This is a hard one.
Maybe it's a word joke, like it's the grandfather of the son.
No, I think his name is Son.
I don't know.
Maybe it's just like an old man, you know, calling a younger guy son.
I have no idea.
The answer. It's his mother.
Oh, that's so stupid. Yes, of course.
"Ah,
I should have thought of that, yes.
The CEO is a woman.
so I'm biased." In a sense. Is this about diversity and inclusion?
It's really mind-blowing, actually.
So I always thought that I'm not very sexist. But in spite of that, I think these subconscious biases are there in everyone's mind.
How much bias I still have in terms of thinking that the CEO needs to be a man.
Yeah, I definitely was picturing a man.
They identify with males more than females these days.
Why can't women also be CEOs or doctors or, right?
When I think about a CEO or someone that's high positioned within a company, I mostly think of men.
And it's a shame, I think.
And that's so weird, because I'm a CEO, and I'm a woman.
And I want to be a CEO. Why didn't I think about that?
I believe women can absolutely be CEOs, and that's definitely something that we should work on, especially when you're saying that so many people have been told this riddle and most people haven't gotten it.
Women make great CEOs and great leaders as well. And yet only 5% of Fortune 500 CEOs are women. Let's change our mindset.
Alrighty. Let me exit out real quick. So with that, happy International Women's Day, which is today, March 8th. A quick spiel about it. Today is important to empower any woman that you know. And the purpose of International Women's Day is to highlight and celebrate women's achievements, raise awareness against biases, and take action for equality. This year's International Women's Day theme is Choose to Challenge, which basically means from challenge comes change. So if you challenge something, that's how things change. And a challenge world is an alert world. So you can visit their website, internationalwomensday.com, to learn more about that. But with that, I will introduce our speaker, Jonathan Brower, give a quick little overview about him. So Jonathan Brower, PE, is an associate of Fuess Partners, a structural engineering firm in Dallas, Texas. He has extensive design and construction administration experience in conventionally reinforced and post-tension concrete structures, as well as steel and masonry structures. Projects he's worked on include schools, hospitals, parking garages, retail and office buildings, and podium slabs for multifamily construction. Jonathan currently serves as the president for ASCE Dallas Branch and just concluded a 2-year term as the director at large for the ASCE Texas section. Jonathan has a bachelor's and master's degree from Texas A&M University. In his free time, Jonathan enjoys running with the Dallas Running Club around Right Walk Lake. With that, we'll hand it over to you, Jonathan.
All right, thanks, Samantha. Yeah, thanks for sharing that video. That was really cool. Glad we got to do that as a group. So I will share my screen now, and we'll get going on this. So, yeah, the younger member committee here with ASCE Dallas asked me to talk today about what I've learned when it comes to virtual meetings and hopefully share some tips. I'm not an expert by any means, but I feel like we've all learned a lot in the past year. We're coming up on a year now of working from home, and I think there's some useful information in this. So just a little bit about me. Samantha's introduction covered a lot of this, but I went to Texas A&M University, got my bachelor's and master's. I graduated in May of 2012 with my master's, and 1 month later started working at Fuess Partners. So I'm coming up on 9 years now at Fuess Partners, and I've loved every minute of it, getting to do the structural engineering design that I do every day with my engineering team. Throughout all of that, ASCE has been a constant. I was involved with the student chapter at A&M, and then as soon as I moved to Dallas, I reached out to the Dallas branch and asked how I can get involved. And so I started off as the membership chair and kind of bounced around through a lot of different positions. And 3 years ago, got asked to get into this track of being the vice president, president. And so here I am now as the president of the Dallas branch, and it's been a different year, obviously, but it's still been a lot of fun, and I really enjoy getting to lead this Dallas branch. And we have a great group of young leaders, especially with Samantha and Nick leading the charge right now. So I want to break down the meetings that we're going to talk about today into 3 categories, and this is just for the sake of my conversation today. And I think in my mind this made sense to me, so I hope that you all can kind of catch on to what I'm sharing here now. So first, we have just our small coordination meeting. So this could be anywhere from just a one-on-one conversation to what I said was maybe a group of 10 people. And these meetings are completely open-ended. There might not necessarily be an agenda. This could just be like an internal team meeting that you do weekly with your coworkers that you're working with day in, day out, just to check in, see how everyone's workflow is going. Or it could just be a personal call with maybe a colleague or someone that's outside of your office. Then we have our larger coordination meetings, anywhere from 5 to 30 people, could be even larger. There's typically a moderator and an agenda, but otherwise an open floor. So those of you all that are involved with the Dallas branch in leadership position, you've attended our board meetings. And so I think that's what would fall into this category. OAC meetings also fall in that category. And anything that involves a full project team, where typically, like in my situation, the projects I work on, the architect will be heading up the coordination meetings, and there might be multiple disciplines on the call, but everyone is free to chime in at any point. And then we have the conference seminar type of setting, which is could be 10 to, or hundreds of attendees. And that's typically there's a primary speaker who's giving their presentation. And there can be Q&A during or after the presentation. And so the ASCE meetings that we just had, during the noon lunch hour right before this, is a perfect example of that. Also, whenever, let's say, the CEO or a president of your company gives a company-wide address, that's kind of the format of those types of meetings. So just some universal advice that I think carry over into all of these meeting types. You want to make sure you're on time. The waiting period right at the start of these meetings, it's already awkward enough. So if we can all get there on time and get on task, that's only going to help. Camera on, I think that's always a huge thing. There are exceptions, of course, but I think if you're in a position to get that camera on and show your face and be able to let people see your countenance, that only helps, especially when we're all just usually stuck at home all day by yourself. It's good to see people's expressions, their smiling faces. Be mindful of your background, right? We don't want to have anything that's too distracting or lots of movement in the background. So there's all these video filters or video and picture filters you can have to just kind of help everyone focus and not be distracted by the people, pets, things that are moving in your background. And then always assume that mute is the default. And there are exceptions to this, of course, and I'll get into that as we go through each of these meeting types. We also want to make sure that we dress the part, and I'm not gonna sit here and tell you to dress in a very specific way and wear a uniform every day, because there's always context, and depending on the people that you're interacting with, right, that could change and vary. But you just want to be mindful of who you're speaking to, who your audience is, and what do you think is most appropriate. And so we're all adults here, and I think we can kind of gauge that. And in the worst case scenario, if you don't know what to expect in terms of who you're speaking to on that video call, or maybe you just overdress a little bit. It's better to be a little overdressed than underdressed, that's for sure. Make sure you're prepared ahead of time, whether it's reading the meeting minute or reading the meeting agenda, or getting your own notes together for whenever you're going to share something at that meeting. You want to be as prepared as possible so you're not scrambling. Using the chat wisely, that could be that could end up becoming a record for the meeting later on. So you don't want to say something that you don't want to be saved and written down. And you also don't want to be too distracting using that chat box. And also want to minimize the multitasking, because that's just another part of the distractions that can happen not only in your background, but if you're distracting yourself by having your phone out or shuffling papers, moving books around, that could lead to you not being prepared, right, when your time comes along. Hardware, this is a big thing. Do some test calls with your camera and your sound and everything that you have going on to make sure that you have everything up and running. And even if that involves calling a friend or a coworker to say, hey, can we do a test call real quick? I just want to make sure that I've got everything working and that I'm not going to have any glitches. Learn how to mute. I think there's some tips that we can all share later, but there's multiple ways to unmute yourself when you're on a call, and there's quicker and slower ways to do that. So maybe that'll come out later when we have kind of our group discussion. And then just making sure that it's bright enough in the room. Make sure that there's good lighting on your face. It doesn't look like you're hiding in a cave. Just so, again, people can see your countenance, they can read your expressions, and hopefully just get a better feel for an in-person meeting, even when we're having to do this virtually. And most importantly, I think patience is really key. This year, this past year that we've all been working from home, it's been difficult in a number of ways, not just with the pandemic. There's been a lot going on to society, a lot going on in everyone's personal lives. And so when things don't go perfectly on the meeting, or someone's not following the advice maybe that's in this PowerPoint, try to just be patient with them. You don't know what's going on in their life personally at home. There could be other things that are causing them to be late to meetings, or maybe they have to have kids running in the background because their school's shut down, or they've had exposure in a recent time. It just all is, we're all kind of working together through this kind of changing and fluid situation. So I think if we can all practice patience through it, that'll just make things smoother, and it won't have to be as tense on those virtual meetings. Okay, so I wanted to go into some meeting-specific advice now. And this is first we're gonna look at those small coordination meetings, which again, a little open-ended, smaller groups. I think in those it's really imperative to have that camera on, especially if it's like your like company team or engineering team meeting that you're having. It's just good to see people's faces as you start the week or as you have a check-in throughout the week, just so that you can, maintain that relationship that you've had with these people throughout the years in the office. And, on these calls, mute's probably not as necessary because you're going to be chiming in and having dialogue a lot of times. But if there's a lot of noise in your house or wherever you're working, it might be good to have the mute on. And then I really like this term, when it comes to dress code, read the room, or an architect wrote an article about virtual meetings, and she said, you need to read the Zoom, or have you perfected the art of reading the Zoom? So, just get a feel for your engineering team or whoever you're having these small meetings with, and maybe you don't have to go the full business attire for those meetings, but you do need to kind of maintain a certain level of dress code. And so again, I'm not here to lay out an exact uniform for these calls, but just be cognizant of who you're talking to and the environment that you're having these meetings in. All right, so we'll go up to those larger coordination meetings that involve people in and out of your office. And on these meetings, the really big thing and really important thing is the agenda and following the agenda. You want to make sure that you read that agenda ahead of time. Know that when your portion of the meeting is coming up, that you're prepared and ready with your portion to share or whatever notes you need to have together. And try not to jump ahead in the agenda. The agenda is there. I'll get to this later, but the agenda is there as a map for this meeting and a timeline for this meeting. And so disrupting that timeline is only going to make this meeting longer. So if you're someone who gets frustrated with all these meetings happening all throughout the week, if you're not following the agenda that someone else has sent out, you're just making these meetings a little bit more confusing and last a little bit longer. On these calls, camera, I would say, is probably optional, but maybe preferred, especially if you're working with a client on this call. You want to make sure that they see your face, your countenance, that that you can keep up with them. And like I said, it just gives these meetings a much more personal touch and feel to them. And muting in these meetings, I think, is a lot more essential. When there's a lot more people talking and it's an open floor, you want to make sure that there's no distractions coming in from your side of the thing. But you also want to make sure that you know when to chime in and when the right time to voice your part is going to be beneficial to the meeting overall. And again, on the dress code, read the Zoom. Think about, again, is this with a client? Is this with someone that maybe their expectations might be a little bit higher than others? Just kind of understand the context of the meeting that you're within. And also, I think with regards to the chat, this is a place where you don't want to have extensive sidebar conversations. You're having this meeting, this larger coordination meeting, in order to hash out these coordination items. And so if there's the person leading the meeting or someone else who's maybe a committee chair is speaking and you're trying to work through a situation, having a sidebar conversation in the chat with someone else, that's really not going to benefit the entire group. And it's just going to lead, eventually you're going to have to go back to that, right? And rehash what you've talked about in that sidebar convo in the chat. So instead, just look for the right time to chime in and speak up. And again, that minimizes the distractions that the chat could then create. All right, on these larger conferences, seminar type meetings, this is definitely one where, the camera could definitely be more on the off side than on side, but if it's possible, you might just want to turn it on. That way, it just gives the speaker, that feeling that they're actually talking to someone, right? And that they're not just talking to a list of names. Mute is definitely a must, though, in this case. You want to make sure that you're not distracting the speaker with any audio that's not supposed to be there. And again, reading the context of the meeting for the dress code. And then understand how the Q&A is going to function. Is it, in this case, maybe the chat is preferred for those questions to come in. Maybe you need to raise your virtual hand, or maybe the speaker is open to being interrupted whenever throughout their presentation so that someone can ask a question. All right, so that's kind of tips for being a spectator or a teammate in the meeting. I wanted to now share kind of what I've learned over the past few months being a leader of these meetings, especially when it comes to our ASCE Dallas Branch meetings. Oh, skipped one. Okay, so I mentioned earlier agendas. Agendas have become a real big thing for me, and I really see their importance now that I've worked through a few months of being the Dallas Branch President. I remember, I think it was about a year or 2 years ago, I went to a ASCE Texas section leadership development weekend, and we had a parliamentarian come in. So this parliamentarian was someone who basically knew all the rules when it came to like something when you think of like Robert's Rules of Order, or how, I don't know what the US Congress uses, but it's similar to Robert's Rules of Order, but it's basically a function of how you can run meetings. And I remember the parliamentarian, she said, you know, your meeting attendees, they deserve an agenda and they deserve an on-time meeting. And so agendas, they really help out with that because they become the map, the compass that you can use to navigate through a meeting, especially when you have, you know, 10, 20, 30 people in a meeting. You need that agenda not only to keep everyone on task, but then also when people start to kind of drift too far off course, you can kind of yank it back and say, hey, we're on section 3.2 of the agenda. You just jumped to section 9.8. And that'll get everyone back on track, because that's, you know, hopefully people have reviewed your agenda and they have an expectation now for when their portion is going to come up, for when certain topics are going to start to come up in line. And so if we start jumping around too much, that's just going to lead to confusion and people won't be prepared at that point. So I really like to cling to the agenda as, again, like a map or the timeline that we want to follow. And it might come across sometimes as, you know, you're just, oh, this person's clinging to the agenda and they're not willing to, you know, branch out and explore other topics. But really, it's for the greater goal of keeping this meeting on time and keeping everyone focused on the task at hand. And minutes are equally as important. So for those of you that don't know, you know, the agenda is typically what you get before the meeting starts, and it's what you're using during the meeting to help navigate through that time. The minutes are essentially the notes or the recap of everything that happened during that meeting. And these are typically sent out, these are typically done in like ASCE's case by the secretary, or a lot of other meetings that you'll have with engineering and project teams will have someone designated to take the minutes. And so when it comes to making the minutes, I think it's always important to kind of compare notes from multiple people. So I know, like on my company, when we have, when we're on coordination calls with architects, you know, we'll all be kind of taking our own notes, and at the end we kind of get together and compile them all together so that we make sure that we covered all of the important notes that had to be picked up during that meeting. And then we can all review it, right? And kind of spot check each other to make sure that nothing fell through the cracks, and then file it away efficiently so that you know where to find it when something comes up. Because I know this happens a lot on my projects where someone will say something that they're going to do in the meeting, and then they don't do it. And they say, I don't remember agreeing to that. And if you have those meeting minutes saved and filed away somewhere where you can easily find them, you can quickly kind of pull that back to their attention. And you can also, you know, review those for yourself to make sure, oh, wow, I told so-and-so that I was going to do this by Tuesday, and it's now, you know, the Monday before. I need to really pick it up. So they help not only you with your tasks, but others with their tasks. All right, some other tips and tricks when it comes to managing these meetings is, you know, make sure you're acknowledging everyone. It's really tough when we're all working from home, right? We don't get to physically see people. And so sometimes for people that the monthly team meeting that you have with them, that could be their only interaction kind of interpersonally with someone that whole week, because then they're just working the rest of the time. So take some time to acknowledge them, ask them how they're doing, just get a feel for what's going on in their life. If there's new ones on the call or visitors, make sure that they get introduced, because then when people's names just get thrown around and you get into the throes of the meeting, that person could easily get very lost. When you're screen sharing, especially if you're sharing your sound too, make sure you've muted or turned off your notifications. Make sure you've shared the right screen. I know, like on my computer setup, I like to get my email notifications pop up, but they only pop up on one screen. And the same with like my Teams chats, they only show up on one screen. So I know that when I'm going to share my screen, I'm going to not share that one screen where all my notifications come up. I'm going to share kind of my secondary screen, and that way there's no distractions that come up while I'm sharing my screen. And then scheduling, this is something that I've actually learned from my father. He shared this with me just recently. He's a professor at the medical school in El Paso, back where I grew up. And he gets scheduled in meetings all the time, all day long, and they're just back to back to back with no breaks in between. So sometimes I'll go 5, 6 straight hours just bouncing from Zoom meeting to Zoom meeting with no break. And it's because, you know, we just assume now that everything's a virtual online Zoom meeting, right? Oh, as soon as you see someone's calendar open up, you know, I can jump in and grab them for the next hour and talk to them. You know, whereas back when we were in real life and having to travel to meetings, you know, you typically have to schedule out, you know, 30 minutes, an hour, at least 15 minutes between these meetings to give someone time to walk from the conference room back to their desk. And so I think, you know, now it's just more of a courtesy. Be kind of cognizant of others' time and of your own time. You need time to, you know, kind of gather yourself after a meeting, get your notes together, get the meeting minutes put together, answer a few emails, and then get back to work with another meeting. So I think, you know, that's something I think that we can all kind of carry forward, especially us as young engineers when we're having to work with our team leaders and more experienced engineers in our office. Be just aware that these people, especially when they get higher and higher up in companies, they're in a lot of meetings. And so scheduling them immediately after they get out of one meeting might not be the best, and you might not get their best attitude at that time either. So if you give them some time to breathe, give them some time to collect themselves, they might be in a better position to then address your needs and your questions. All right, I wanted to talk about one very specific event that happens in a lot of meetings, especially when there's a lot of people coordinating and a lot of people talking. So this is a kind of case study. And so this is what I call the over-talking logjam, when everyone just starts talking all at once, right? And then nothing, right? No one can hear what the other is saying. And then there's invariably the whole, oh, you go ahead. No, you go ahead. And then they both said at the same time. So now who goes? And we just kind of end in this stalemate all of a sudden, right? And so there's kind of a number of things I found we can do to minimize those. Is, you know, try to be patient again, but wait to speak, wait for that right gap and kind of get a feel for others' patterns and people's kind of pace of talking to see, okay, when can I interject? And also, if you hear someone sharing something and you already have a response for them, you know, let them go ahead and finish, even if you've already kind of started to formulate your response. Because if by interrupting them, even if you're going to answer their question quickly, you might kind of throw them off, or you might be misinterpreting the start of their statement and they haven't even gotten to the end. And then I think this is also really important, is especially if you are the kind of manager of a meeting or the one leading the meeting and you hear someone get cut off or interrupted, make sure that you go back and address that person, right? And let them have their moment, right? And say, Samantha, I think you were trying to say something, but you got cut off. What would you like to share? And then also, we know it's awkward, right? We know that we've all just interrupted each other and kind of reached this logjam. We don't necessarily need to acknowledge it again, right? And talk about how awkward that was that Samantha cut me off, but then Nick started talking. Let's just move forward, right? Let's keep this meeting going and kind of get on to the next step. All right, well, that was all I really wanted to share today. Like I said, that probably wasn't a full comprehensive coverage of everything that could happen in a virtual meeting, but I hope, you know, you guys got some good tips out of that. And if anyone has questions or wants to bring up something else, we can do that now.
Yeah, thank you for that. I thought it was really helpful, because an issue I always have is not knowing when to have my camera on. Like, what kind of meetings should I come in with a camera? Should I wait and see if everyone has a camera and then turn it on? So I think it was nice to see the breakdown of which meetings. Does anyone else have any questions?
Yeah. Hey, Samantha, this is Chris Hoff. I was kind of curious to poll this group as something I've noticed. We've been in this for a year or so, and in a way, I think we've almost swung the pendulum where people are getting a little too comfortable with remote work and being on camera. And sometimes things get a little silly with backgrounds and in the chat and stuff. Do y'all see that on, I know it's probably different if you're having an internal meeting within your own firms, but if you've got a city person or a TxDOT person or a Corps of Engineers person, do y'all get a sense that people are unshaven and wearing, Yankees t-shirts and stuff, and it's just a little bit too informal? I feel like it is, but I'm curious what y'all think.
Good question.
Maybe nobody wants to speak up because they're realizing that they are too informal. But
Not all at once.
I feel like at first maybe it was, people. I feel like there was kind of, at least in my experience, I feel like we were all doing pretty good on those examples you just gave, Chris. And then it kind of, people did regress a little bit. But now I feel like we're kind of on this uptick again where people have realized like, okay, we've been in this for a while. This might be the norm for a little while. So I need to really up my game, so to speak. So I think lately it's been improving, but I feel like maybe in the late summer, early fall, there was a little regression I noticed.
I agree. I think there's a certain amount of stress that we all have, obviously, in the whole pandemic situation that's pushed us into this, and so there's a little bit of leeway, and maybe summer last fall was when it really started for folks to realize we're really in this for a long haul, being remote, and so I can get away with being a little less formal because it's stressful. But now, here we are going further and further on, and maybe it does seem more like back in an office environment, even when we're virtual, where maybe some of that stress that we displayed outwardly on the video calls, maybe now it's not so accepted. But anyway,
I definitely think that's true, Chris. I think I've seen some silly comments in the chats, or people haven't shown their face in a few months, and when they do, they weren't ready for it. So I
think Jonathan, your note about the chat becoming part of a public record, in terms of a meeting or just the meeting minutes. Be careful what you say in the chats, in that sense, because there are recordings going on, and sometimes these do end up doubling as meeting minutes, and an agency person could go back and watch the meeting, for example, and if you're kind of goofing around in the chat, they'll see that, and that's a reflection on you and the firm. So.
Yeah.
Oh, I definitely agree. I think at the end of the day, Chris, it's kind of as Jonathan mentioned at the beginning, it was a state of, okay, everyone is moving to this online platform. Let's figure this out. Then you saw people treating it as a true meeting just over the video. And then as it started to become more laxed, you saw people showing up, unshaved, their hair a mess, t-shirts. And that's, it kind of had that change of tone, but it's kind of gone back to that, okay, well, this is essentially just a regular meeting, just instead of being in front of one another, we are now just in front of our camera. So I think it is changing, but I will say I appreciate that there was at least a phase then, or this new awakening of understanding of, hey, if you're within your own home, if you've got a collared shirt, or you're at least conducting yourself professionally, regardless of if you have a collared shirt or not. I think that's what people care about, is just the way they carry themselves in the meeting.
Yeah. What was I gonna say? I lost my thought.
She got stuck thinking about all the outfits that she's been working through.
Yeah, girls, we have it easy. Just a sweater. It's professional enough.
Right.
Guys, you have t-shirts and polos.
I was
gonna ask. What would be let's say you join a meeting and no one has their camera on, or just one person has their camera on. Do you suggest turning yours on, or do you suggest taking the lead and showing people that they can turn their cameras on? What's your recommendation?
That's a good question. I think, again, I guess it depends on the context of the meeting. I know that happens a lot to me. I have this one project where we have the OAC call, and there's a lot of people calling into that. And yeah, typically at first I'm the only one with my camera on, but then the architect comes in, and then the GC finally turns theirs on. And but I guess if you're in a larger meeting, maybe where it's a lot of people you don't know, maybe that's. Yeah. I guess it's just personal comfort level at that point.
Yeah.
I had a comment a couple weeks ago from a TxDOT person that said that they were actually, he didn't use the word policy, but he said, we were told to kind of leave our cameras off for bandwidth reasons, because the TX.IT system was being pushed with everybody working remote, and they're a state agency. They're not rolling in IT dollars either. But he basically said he wasn't supposed to turn his video on unless he really, really had to. And that was the first time I actually heard an agency reason for not going on video as opposed to just a personal preference. Mm-hmm. So I think I view that my agency meetings now, where I may be in a meeting with 5, 6, 7 city or DOT people, and none of them have their cameras on. I keep that in mind, so that it is maybe not fair to judge that nobody wants to be on video. It might be a direction.
Yeah, as Jonathan said, patience with everyone.
Yes.
Nick, do you want to start the next session?
Yeah, we'll go ahead and start doing that. Sorry, I was just making sure no one had any more questions here. All right, continuing on. I'm just going to open the floor and see if anyone has any Microsoft tips and tricks. This is kind of just another open segment. If anyone's just had any ideas for things that they've done in their Zoom calls, either like some funny stories that they've shared and how they resolved them, as far as like awkwardness or maybe any type of confrontation point you had during a meeting, and you had to have someone say, hey, quiet your kid in the background, they're disturbing the meeting, or if anyone got upset, or even if if you've hosted very successful Microsoft team meetings, how to get people involved and how to spice up a meeting. As with this being kind of a continued thing, everyone's looking for ways to spice up their online meetings and online events, trying to get some tips and tricks for this meeting group itself. So open the floor there.
Well, one thing I noticed Jonathan said is to mute your notifications when you're sharing screens. I have had issues with this. I don't know how to mute my notifications. Can anyone show me?
For Teams or for like?
Yeah, for Teams.
So Samantha, I can chime in, and I know you'd asked me to share some more tips and tricks, but that one I was gonna talk on that, because you can do one of two things, right? You can mute them completely, or there's an option on Microsoft Teams where you can only have it show the notification, but it doesn't show the message, right? So let me share my screen real quick, and then I'll show you what I was talking about, because I've seen this a little too often where, once you go on, everything that you're going to do is going to be in your settings here. So when you go in your settings, if you go to notifications, you can actually turn off show message preview, and it'll just say you have a message from Samantha, but it won't necessarily say what it says, right? It'll just do that. But then of course you can go down.
Are you showing something, Manny?
Yeah, I think it's not sharing everything that you're showing.
Oh yeah, I shared the wrong screen.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Let me see.
Perfect example. Things like this happen.
I know, exactly.
Yeah, I always have issues with sharing my screen. I'm like,
yeah, luckily when you shared the wrong screen, there wasn't an embarrassment there, Manny.
I know. So now you can see it. What I was gonna say is, like, on here, just everything's gonna be within like your little picture and then your settings, right? And then you go on notifications. You can turn off this little guy right here that says show message preview, and it'll only show who it's coming from and what it is, but it won't say any of the content, right? So I know, Samantha, you and I sometimes just chat about random things, just catching up for our mental health. So this is a great option for that. And then you can actually go dig deeper into what the differences are, right? So if you want to chat, and if somebody mentions you, you probably want a banner. But if somebody replies to something, you probably want to turn that off. Likes and reactions, probably off, right? So just things like that you got to think about, because I know our notifications can get a little bit crazy. So
is this something you'd have to go into before you share your screen, kind of a prep before?
Right. Yep.
Gotcha.
So
there's no quick mute button.
No.
Okay. Well, that's helpful.
But
now I know.
Actually, no, there is a quick mute button. Just set your computer to do not disturb. And that's one of the things that I always tell people, because especially if you're doing a live broadcast on Microsoft Teams, I always send an email with these are the instructions that you got to follow, right? And it's remain on mute, set yourself do not disturb. And then another thing is also to adjust your noise suppression. So if you go on the same settings and you go in your devices, you can adjust the amount of background noise that is removed, right? So your computer uses AI to try to remove some background noise. But sometimes if you turn it on too high, you sound muffled. So again, adjust those settings and all those things you want to do before, right? So in that same, so if you go to your settings and then devices, there's a make a test call button. And what you do is you speak to it, you say, I do this probably once a week because your settings could get messed up. And I say, hey, I'm just practicing, and you're talking to your screen, right? But then you hear yourself back, and then you know exactly what you sound like.
Gotcha. So you said set yourself to do not disturb. Is that just in the activity?
So that's actually like a computer thing. So down here, notifications, just set your thing to do not disturb. One of these. So it's this focus assist, right? So you can set, and again, this is settings that you could play with and everything. And then, furthermore, you could do on Teams, just set your thing to do not disturb. So there's 2 different options.
Yeah. I think what I always have issue is in the team meetings I'm in, I'll be sharing my screen and people will be commenting, and I don't know if they show up in the screen I'm sharing. Oh, Scott shared in the chat. He said you can also type /DND in the search bar in Teams.
That's good to know.
And I know sometimes, I think even if you like close Teams, like hit the X, like that doesn't necessarily close Teams. Like
right.
You'll still get notifications. I know some people have made that mistake where they think, oh, I've exited out of Teams, I'm no longer in the program, but then they'll still be popping up.
So yeah, it's helpful to learn how to turn that off.
Right.
And one of the things that I've done is unplug my headset, and basically the computer senses that it's been unplugged, and so it switches microphones, so it doesn't actually mute you when you unplug your headset. So one tip is when you're around your computer, always treat it as a hot mic.
Yep.
So don't say anything that you wouldn't want accidentally overheard.
Yeah. Always helpful.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I always assume that someone's watching on my computer. You got to make sure, you got to be careful, close that thing down.
There's that too.
So I asked Manny to share a few things also. So if no one has anything they want to share, I'll let Manny share some things that he's been able to find in Microsoft Teams.
Okay, I guess I'll continue.
Well, like there's a whole list. I asked.
Yeah,
him,
you already like gave us some great information.
He has a whole list.
I know. Whenever she sent me an IM this morning, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm ready for this, because I'm always like getting onto people for not following the right etiquette.
Yeah.
I mean, I
like,
share the wrong screen. So.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like. But anyways, one of the things that I see the most is people not sharing presentations properly, right? So 9 times out of 10 people don't share it properly. So let me share my screen, and then I'll bring up this, so you're going to see yourself, so I apologize for that. So one thing, you learn how to use your, well, I guess, crap. Since I'm already sharing, I have to stop sharing. So let's see, how do I do this? So essentially, I can't share this, but when you go to share content, there's going to be 4 different things. There's desktop, where you choose what screen you want to pick. There's Windows, where you pick, you want to show your applications. And then there's Whiteboard, and then PowerPoint. So PowerPoint is, you can even browse through it to show from your OneDrive or your local computer, right? That's the best way to do it, because especially if you're not at your desk where you have 2 screens or whatever, and you still want to see people and share your presentation full screen, this is a great option, just because it doesn't take up your screen. Let me see if I can find one.
I put a screenshot of like what I get when it does, when I hit the share screen. We could use that as a go.
Yeah, so what I'm doing now is I'm sharing a presentation. I don't know what this presentation is, so oh, it's Culture of Caring Moments. So if you're a Jacobs employee, you know that we do Culture of Caring Moments for every meeting. So what this is you're now seeing the full screen, right, on your side, and you actually see little you actually see little arrows to move back and forth. So Samantha, I'm going to see if you know how to use this. So go ahead and request where you can advance slides, you can say request control. And this is really important for whenever, say today, right? So Samantha had some slides for the beginning, and then Jonathan had his presentation. One person can be sharing the presentation, and then Jonathan could have taken control of the presentation and advanced the slides at his own pace. So right now, Samantha's advancing the slides, but I'm sharing the presentation, right? So, and on my screen, I'm still in only the Teams window. I didn't have to open a new window. I don't have to take up whole screen. You don't have to worry about notifications popping up because this is showing the presentation. If I didn't want anybody to be able to advance slides like Samantha is doing right now, there's an option when you're sharing. There's a little eye that says, basically it doesn't allow people to do that, right? So if I want to be the only one that advances slides, then I will toggle that setting and I can be the only one advancing slides. So if you're sharing a presentation, this is always the way to do it. And if I remember correctly, this may actually use less bandwidth because you're not constantly streaming. Basically what it does is it pushes the file to every computer and it just knows what slide is on. So it also helps with the bandwidth piece. So again, keep in mind like what you're sharing and what's the best way to do it, right? Because this way anything can show up on my screen. I can get a notification, I can get a call. I could even drop connection. And if it's on OneDrive, the presentation will still be able to be presented if my computer drops internet connection, and Samantha can continue to advance the slides as if nothing had happened, right? So anyways, that's one of the biggest. Go ahead, Samantha.
Sorry. We have a quick question in the chat. Chris said, Manny, along those lines of screen sharing, if you're presenting, is there a way to run the meeting, share your screen, and still see the chat?
Yes. So this is a perfect example of that because I didn't have my chat window open, but since you're sharing this on your screen, it only shows as if you were viewing somebody's screen, right? So I minimize the window right now that Teams is on, and to you it doesn't show any different, right? Because you're still seeing the presentation. So you can minimize, you can move things around. It's as if you were viewing somebody's content, and your presentation is uninterrupted, right?
So is everyone seeing just the, like, I see text on the side like notes for myself to read. Does everyone see those notes, or does everyone just see them?
So all we're seeing is a presentation, and on that same window, since Samantha has control of it, she can also see all the slides in the bottom. If she wants to skip a slide, she can. If she wants to look ahead of the presentation, she can. And again, this is all because she decided to take control of this presentation, even though I shared it. So I could request control back. Anybody else can take it, and different things like that, right? So this is definitely the best way, because I know a lot of us, I personally, minimize the presentation and I just switch between them because, like, for example, right now, if you click on, say, my picture or Samantha's picture on the bottom, it'll actually switch the view that you're seeing to everyone else's cameras. So usually what I'll do is I'll share the presentation, and then I'll just toggle between it because I like to see people's faces and I like to kind of gauge the reactions that I'm getting from people. So I like to toggle between all the cameras in the presentation. But if you're sharing your screen, then people are going to see exactly what you're switching between. But if you're just sharing the presentation, then you don't have to worry about that. Let's see. So that's my spiel on presentations. That's always my biggest pet peeve, because once you learn how to use this tool, it's so much better and it looks so much more professional, right? Especially if you're doing a live broadcast, when you want it to be professional and stuff like that. This is definitely the way to go. Let's see.
Manny, I have a question because
Yep, go ahead.
So even though Samantha has control, like I can still flip ahead and look at the next slide. Is there a way to stop that? Because, like, what if I just want to skip to the end and read all your slides but not listen to you?
Yep. So try it now. I think I just turned it off. So, yep. So whenever you're seeing, if you were presenting this, it would say take control. So I could take back control from Samantha, and then there's a little eyeball. So now that I've toggled that on, it has this little slash through the eyeball, and now you have to look at the presentation, the slide that I'm on.
Gotcha. Okay.
Awesome. Before I move on, is there any other questions about the PowerPoint? I have like one more, I think.
No, yeah, this is perfect, actually. It's surprising that after so long of using these or using Microsoft Teams that I'm still learning all this new stuff. So thank you so much for all these tips.
Yeah,
I agree.
And on that note, I'd like to say always keep on top of the what's new tab, because I love technology. I love keeping up with the latest applications and stuff like that. So on your Teams application, you have activity, chat, Teams, calendar, calls, whatever. Then at the very bottom, there's help. If you click on help, and then there's a tab that says what's new, it brings you to a Internet Explorer, or your browser page, and it just keeps notes. It has a release date of that version, and it says what's new, right? So that's how I found out whenever we got breakout rooms in Teams. That's how new commands are showing up, because somebody the other day was like, oh, Teams constantly changes things on me. Yeah, it does, because they're improving it, but keep on top of that what's new tab. And it's, when you're drinking your morning coffee, read up on what Microsoft Teams is is new on that week. So
Interesting, yeah.
Anyways.
Danielle also said that she follows Microsoft Teams on Twitter, and that's how she learned about new features, like breakthroughs and whatnot.
Exactly. Yep. Let's see what else I had on here. Oh, just some simple commands. So Command Shift M toggles your mute. Control on a Mac is Command. Control Shift M toggles your mute. Control Shift O toggles your video. So that's just a quick one. If you don't want to, if you can't find the button, it's a quick little command for that. And the last thing that I'll share, I'm almost done, is I always like to keep my phone logged into Teams as a backup, because so many times, I don't know if it's just my home internet or whatever, but if I lose connection, I want to just jump back on as soon as possible. So I'll keep my phone as a backup, whether it be through dial-in options or to join via the Teams app. Always keep a backup, because as we all know, we're so likely to lose network connections these days.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I got, Samantha.
Well, thank you. Those are helpful. I always have questions, but I don't take the time to figure it out. I'm just like, well, I wish I knew how to do this, and just ignore it. So it was helpful. I'll have someone teach me. Does anyone else have any useful tips that they've encountered in Teams that they want to share? One thing that I'm sure everyone knows that I use a lot is when you chat, when you type something, you can edit your text. I didn't know about that for a long time, but sometimes I would misspeak. I would say the wrong term, and I could just quickly change it, and so they could read what I meant to say. So that's been helpful. You can also do polls on Teams. So I know we'll do it when we want to figure out what to eat or just make a decision. We'll do a quick poll, and that's just when you hover over text. When you hover the text, there's those ellipses, and then I click more actions, and it'll give me the option to create a poll, and then also to edit my text. I'm sure everyone already knew that though, so I don't know how helpful that was.
Hey, it's all learning session. We're all here to learn more, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Samantha, for the recording, where does the recording go? Does it live in this meeting space?
Manny would probably know more, but when I record meetings, it goes into the chat for me, and then it goes into the Jacobs space, and I have to download it.
Yeah, so it goes to Microsoft Stream. So if you log into your Office web app, if you go to Microsoft Stream, then you can share the link. But just keep in mind, Jacobs logs it to where you can only share to internal people. So if you want to share to external people, you typically have to download it and post it on YouTube, Vimeo, or something like that.
That's exactly what I do, because for this meeting, when we're done, I'm going to get all of the information on it, so I have to download it and then re-upload it.
Yeah. So usually it'll notify you in the chat. You click, it'll say the recording's ended. You click on it, and then you can click to, I think it says share, or what is, I don't know the exact term.
Well, you basically click on the link, and then it'll take you to a web page, and on that web page you can share it, but you can only share it internally, like Manny said. Or if you need to send it externally, you're going to have to download it and then re-upload it somewhere.
Yeah, and Teams always emails me when I finish a recording, so I get that link as well.
That's what I was wondering for the non-Jacobs folks on this. You told them that we're recording, but I don't know how they would get to it. So I guess, Ed, you're on top of that.
I'll be taking care of that.
Yeah, YouTube, everyone. We have our ASCE Dallas Branch. We'll upload it there.
And a quick plug-in, if you guys ever want to see any of our past videos, and in the future we'll do more videos, every time we have a meeting we will record and put those meetings on there. So if you ever want to go back, or you thought there was a helpful point at any of our other meetings, or share with other people in your office, share them the link to the YouTube channel, and you can just view the videos right there.
Yeah. And since we only have a few minutes left, I wanted to share that this week we have our Younger Member Social on Thursday, and we're joining forces with the American Institute of Architecture, or AIA. So we're going to be co-hosting a social with them. So if you're interested in joining, visit our social media sites, our newsletter, or website to find the link to access the meeting. Should be a lot of fun. So hope to see everyone there.
Awesome.
If you want to get involved with ASCE, with younger members in ASCE, reach out to Nick, myself, Amanda, Tyler, Jonathan, that are all on this call. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions, comments, anything else to add?
Before we go, can we take a group photo?
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
group photos every time.
All right, everyone smile, and if you want to wave, hold up your hand.
Wait, fix the hair. Okay.
Look, hi.
All right, let me take a few.
It's even more awkward when it's on
I'm
web
shifting
chat because you're
poses.
holding even longer.
Oh, actually, everyone, for International Women's Day, that's actually like what they're asking people to do. The choose to challenge is to raise your hand saying you choose to challenge. So
Challenge? Okay, yeah, let's go ahead and do that. I like that.
Let's go.
All right, I think I got a good one.
All right, awesome.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you,
everyone.
guys.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing. Thank you, Jonathan and Manny and everyone for chiming in, helping out.
Very helpful. Thank y'all.
That was
Bye.
great.
Good week,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye.